Hi, how are you? My name is Matt Ackerson. I'm the founder and CEO of AutoGrow.co, as you hopefully, maybe already know. And today we're talking about the 2020 election funnel. What's going to happen? Who's going to win? There's a lot of anxiety and anticipation out there in terms of what exactly is going to happen, uh, who's going to win, uh, what in the news is going to happen. Are we going to know on election night? Are we not? Um, so I want to break it down for you, my prediction, and I want to do it as objectively as possible and from a total marketing perspective. So 2020, we can all agree, has been a crazy year. I mean, everything from coronavirus and then the protests slash riots, depending on how you want to view it. Um, it's and all of the political stuff going on. It's been a crazy year. And for us at AutoGrow, it's been a really busy and productive year. We're very, very grateful for how we've actually grown this year substantially compared to last year. I know personally entrepreneurs and other business owners who are struggling, and there was a month or two in there where we really had to figure things out. But it's been a good year for us, and I know that's a tough year for some of you who are watching this, and others are doing well. But if it's tough for you right now, just hang in there, and things will they will get better. 2021, I think, is going to be an excellent year economically. I think that the pandemic is going to go away, and if you're in a country or a state where it's locking down again, know that isn't going to last, and just hang in there. All right. So anyway, that being said, I want to preface this prediction and analysis by saying that so why should you put any credence at all in what I'm about to tell you? Well, as I said, I'm the founder of the business. I started AutoGrow.co in 2010. We have serviced over 830 clients at this point. So we have experience working with many different people across many different marketing verticals, industry niches, and different countries. Created hundreds and hundreds of funnels. I've been doing this even before I started the company in 2010. I had a previous company that I started as a sophomore in college. So I've learned a lot over the years about people, about marketing, and about persuasion as it relates to the election here. So, for example, in 2016, I actually didn't make this prediction publicly. I kind of wish I did. I kind of wish I put some money on it. But a full 13 months before the 2016 election came about, I was watching the candidates and I said, okay, I think this candidate, Trump, is going to win. I made that prediction 13 months in advance. I only did it with close family members and a girlfriend at the time. So in 2018, when there was the interim elections, and obviously 2016 was right. And in 2018, I got it right again, which is more difficult because it's not just binary, because you could just guess and be lucky about who's going to win in a presidential election. So 2018 was more nuanced, and I said, okay, I follow the news pretty closely. It's kind of a hobby of mine. I watch all of the news, left, right, center, all that stuff. It's just interesting to me, always has been. And I correctly predicted that the Democrats would gain in the House of Representatives. I was off by only 2 seats, but I said that they would take control, and I was off by only 2 seats. And my number was exactly right for the Senate, where I said that the Republicans would hold on to the Senate. And if you want to go back and look at that video, you can. It's still online, and it's kind of go over some interesting concepts that I'm going to expand upon and go over again in this video. So things to keep in mind about the 2020 election. that are really big motivators for people, and why I'm going to be making my prediction in this case, because it's a very contentious election. There's a lot of data going both directions. Some data says very strongly that Biden is going to win, and it's going to be a landslide for Biden. And there's other data and evidence saying Trump is going to win, and it's going to be a landslide for Trump. But what's the right answer? Well, having established some credibility right off the bat, so you know that I'm not just shooting in the dark here, and I have been right in the past. These are the four biggest motivators, as I mentioned briefly in my 2018 video, for what is going to get people to vote one way or another. And they're listed in order of priority and persuasion power. And I take these as inspiration, actually, with full credit due to Scott Adams, who is the creator of Dilbert. And he wrote this in his book that came out, I believe, in 2016, 2017, called Win Bigly. And in order of priority, lowest priority, kind of like a ladder. At the bottom of the ladder would be aspiration, although there are things that are less persuasive and less effective marketing-wise than aspiration. But aspiration, in terms of the top four, would be the lowest, meaning you're selling aspirationally. You are making a pitch. You see yourself on a beach, and you see yourself driving that car and being and feeling really successful. You have that image of success. That's aspirational selling, and that's pretty persuasive. But in terms of the top four, it's at the bottom. The next one up would be little fear. Little fear. So not as compelling as something where you might have like a gun pointed in your face. That would be kind of at the top of the ladder here. But a little fear might be something else, like, certain, maybe taxes, for example, might go up a little bit if one candidate wins versus another. So you're going to be paying more, basically. You're going to be losing some money, or you feel like you might be losing some privilege, but it's not going to destroy your life, right? The next one up is identity. Okay, so how do you identify yourself, both from, I don't know, male, female, the superficial stuff, but also how do you identify yourself maybe in terms of, your career, your talents, who do you identify with? A lot of very effective marketing campaigns persuade and market at the level of identity because it's very, very effective. For example, part of one's identity could be just the idea of young, or wanting to be young, which could be part aspirational selling as well. But for example, with a brand such as Coca-Cola, many of their commercials feature, young people drinking Coca-Cola. So that can persuade at the level of identity, as an example. There are better examples out there, but you get what I'm saying. And finally, at the top of the ladder is big fear. Big fear. This means you could lose your house, you could lose your life, you could lose your livelihood. You think that, something dramatic is going to really potentially uproot your life, right? And as I said, it could be, the gun to the head sort of scenario. That is big fear. So those are the biggest motivators, psychologically speaking, in terms of why people are going to go one direction or another. So that begs the question, though, well, which candidate is tapping into these, at what level, to what degree of consistency, and to what degree of effectiveness? Well, let's try to be a little objective. Not a little, let's be objective. And let me just kind of run down before I give you my prediction, some of the strengths and weaknesses of each of the candidates and their campaigns. And to keep this as objective as possible, I'm not going to put any qualifiers. I'm just going to tell you what critics or supporters say are each of their weaknesses or strengths. Fair enough? All right. So let's start with the weaknesses of the Biden campaign. So according to his critics, Biden has a history of lying, and that's an issue. He makes a lot of gaffes, and critics and supporters on the other side from Trump would say that that's a sign of dementia, of mental illness of some kind, or just old age. And another weakness is he has repeatedly said, I will raise taxes. And he later has clarified that to emphasize if you're making below a certain amount, below $400,000, he's going to cut taxes if you're below that. But if you're above that, he's going to raise your taxes. But so that's persuading at the level of number 3, little fear, as I said. So, and persuading, again, it's a weakness because it's persuading in the other direction, right? And finally, the debates are very interesting to watch because part of Trump's strategy, for example, was to force Biden wanted to successfully thread the needle because part of his party, the Democratic Party, is a bit polarized between the moderates and people who are farther left. And so, for example, on energy and fracking, there was something that Biden got a little bit pinned down when he mentioned that. That is very compelling to a certain base of voters who make their livelihood from the oil and gas industry. And in the first debate, there was mention of the Green New Deal, also sort of energy related, but also economics and economy related. And Biden was kind of paired a little bit from his base in terms of trying to, again, thread the needle, but not doing it so successfully. So that kind of divided him a little bit from the base. Now let's go over Trump's weaknesses. So Trump's weaknesses, as highlighted by his critics, are consistent hyperbole, exaggeration, and certainly lying. Okay? So both candidates lying. No surprise, politicians. And it's a political year, very political year. Another big weakness that turns a lot of people off and that critics have repeatedly highlighted is Trump's tone. He has a very kind of strongman tone, his critics will say, that is a big turnoff. And critics have said, for example, that he is, as far as foreign policy, he is an embarrassment to the United States, for that reason, for how he delivers his remarks with this aggressive kind of strongman posture. Critics also say that he is not empathetic. And they also say that he is a white supremacist or racist, for example. So I'm going to actually come back to that last point in the prediction section. I think you might be interested to hear what I have to say about that as far as predicting. Now let's go over the strengths of each of the campaigns. Because obviously I could get more into the weeds here on some of the details, but we're trying to keep this high level. So what are the strengths of the Biden campaign? Just to name a few. His current message as we go into the close of the campaign is as follows. And I've seen this repeatedly on the ads that have been following me around the internet. I'm currently in Florida right now visiting family. And Florida, if you don't know, is a swing state. So the level of advertising and signs is just at another level compared to when I was in New York, because New York is traditionally Democrat, and Republican has gone. Florida has gone for Republican in the last election, and I believe it went for Barack Obama in the previous 2 elections. So it's considered a swing state. So strengths for the Biden campaign is his closing messages is rather positive in terms of the marketing message. He is branding himself as, I'm going to be a president for all Americans. I may be a Democratic candidate, but I'm going to be a president for all Americans. And there's something about that, just to give my personal professional opinion on it, that is, if you were a Trump supporter and you heard that, it's positive, right? It's also kind of unifying and inclusive, because what do critics of Biden say most consistently is like their biggest fear if he were to get elected? Well, he's a socialist, or he's going to be controlled by the far left, for example. Well, that message is a pretty good antidote. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good antidote in terms of keep repeating. And if you've followed our videos or articles in the past, you know that I've talked about the 11 laws of sales funnel physics. And one of the 11 laws that's very effective and that people really underestimate is the law of repetition. So I've heard this message. I'm a Democratic candidate, but I'm going to be a president for all Americans. I've heard it on the radio. I've seen signs. I've seen retargeting ads and just display ads all over the internet. So it's effective at that level as well. And it helps to lower any sort of fear factor for voters who might be on the fence whether to go for Biden or Trump at this point, although I don't think many voters are on the fence right now. Another strength of the Biden campaign is that Biden has a reputation as a likable, nice guy. You know, he comes off as kind of normal. He speaks relatively plainly, and his supporters have said that he is empathetic. And I do see that, and I have seen that in how he has communicated throughout different interviews. He really makes a clear effort to be empathetic in hearing and sympathizing and empathizing with whoever he's taking a question from. So, and you may disagree with that. You may disagree with other things here, but again, trying to be objective, regardless of what side that you're on. We're trying to be objective here, right? And we're trying to learn something from a marketing perspective in order to make an accurate, or as accurate as possible, prediction for what's going to happen. Now for strengths for the Trump campaign. So the strengths for the Trump campaign that I see are there's a lot of energy. You can see this at the rallies. Like, for example, there was one in the swing state of Pennsylvania the other night where it looked like there were 50,000 people that showed up. People people showing up. You know, that's powerful. It's a powerful image. And in terms of energy too, you know, Trump is in 3 days is doing right now, because today is Monday, 14 different rallies in 3 days. And for someone who is 74 years old, compared to, I believe Biden is doing, or was doing, last time I checked on the weekend, it was a ratio of 5-to-1. So energy, certainly a strength there. There's a lot of storytelling that happens, and politicians use this repeatedly. Like they try to tell stories kind of like a case study. But the problem is that with Biden, for example, and other politicians, is when they speak the words, oftentimes it can feel a little bit more mechanical. But when Trump does it, he is actively trying to entertain you, the watcher, or the person in the audience. So the way that he delivers it is a strength. In terms of the framing, how Trump has framed himself too, he did this in 2016 as well, as the outsider and an underdog, which is kind of amazing because he's been the president for 4 years now. You know, like how do you frame yourself as an outsider / underdog when you've literally been in the most powerful position in the world for the last 4 years? But he's done that, and the media, in a sense, because a lot, or a big portion, let's say, of the media has been running a lot of negative news articles about his presidency and about his campaign. So he's actually used that to feed that narrative. There's also other strengths are the conversion rate, very loyal. And that's why you see a lot of people showing up to the rallies. So a high conversion rate is what I predict for the Trump base versus the Biden base, because they're very loyal. And excuse me. There's also So throughout the summer, for example, there were, and there's still some of this going on, there were a lot of protests and there was rioting as well. Um, and people saw videos of it and heard news stories about it. And that scared a lot of people. That scared a lot of people. And if you saw any interviews with Trump at this time, I disagree with personally with him saying this, but he said, "Oh, it's a good thing because," and he said it was a good thing because it was going to motivate, people to vote for him because these, um, the violence that people were seeing and the destruction that people were seeing was associated with, and he helped to associate it with the Biden campaign. So that fed into his narrative and his branding himself as the law and order candidate. Okay, so now that being established, we know the strengths, we know the weaknesses, and we could make this list longer, so it's not meant to be comprehensive. So let's get into the prediction now of what will actually happen, that all being established. So here's my prediction. Here's my prediction. I predict that there is going to be protests. Not too difficult to predict that. There's going to be protests, and there will be some violence in the streets, and some probably rioting as well. But I think that it's going to be less bad and less severe than people think. And maybe I'm an optimist for saying that, but I think it's going to be less bad and much smaller and more isolated than people think. I think because I think, well, we'll come back to that. I think it's going to be less bad than people think, because I think that the news on election night is not going to declare Biden the winner or Trump the winner. I think that some of the news may declare Trump the winner. And I think that the left-leaning news outlets will hold off on declaring any, excuse me, any winner. And I'll give you my reasons for that in a second. I think that on election night, we are going to see a clear indication of who the winner is. I don't think that we're going to have 100% of the votes counted. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think it will be dragged out. But I think that we're going to have an official declared winner within 1 to 2 weeks. And some might say that's optimistic, because it is a very contentious election, but that is part of my prediction. I think 1 to 2 weeks, we will have the official winner, but I think that we'll have a clear indication or trend, if you will, of who the winner is going to be. Now, one pundit I heard, whose abilities I greatly respect and have followed, and I follow a lot of different commentators, but one I heard say that he predicts that both medias are going to, 60% chance that both left-leaning and right-leaning media will report opposite winners, that they'll report opposite winners. And his basis for saying this was that because of inaccuracies and slanted reporting from the past 4 years, as well as just not covering certain news stories that recently were in the news, but only on right-leaning media. I think that will not happen. I predict that will not happen. And I think instead that the media will drag their feet. I think they'll drag their feet. I don't think that they'll declare a winner. I think they'll drag their feet. And so here's my prediction now for who the winner is. Are you ready? I predict that Trump will actually win the popular vote. And I'll tell you why in a second. I predict that he'll win the popular vote. You'll recall that in 2016, Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote. I also predict that Trump will win re-election with the more than the 270 electoral votes needed, since in the US we are a democratic republic, and the way that the electoral system is set up is to proportionally weight states with smaller populations a little bit heavier. The founders had the intention of, you know, encouraging political candidates, presidential candidates, to appeal more to those states with smaller populations and not just focus on, New York and California, for example. But I digress. That's the system we have. It's the Electoral College. And I actually predict that Trump will win re-election by more than 320 votes in the Electoral College. I am not going to give an exact number because it's a little bit of a toss-up there in terms of giving an exact number, but I will say it's going to be more than 320. Okay, and that is my prediction in a nutshell. So now let me briefly kind of explain the reasoning why. So first, on the potential riots and protests and violence in the street that is going to happen, that I predict will happen, and why it will be less bad than people actually think. I think because of the fact that there will not be a clear winner on election night, I think that will help to kind of drain and draw out some of this pent-up energy that people might have and desire to actually go out and protest. I also think that it will be less shocking because the polls recently have completely switched the other way, and people do remember 2016, so they're kind of primed for a potential upset or shock, compared to what the polls have been saying up until recently. I think up until recently, I saw the Real Clear Politics average cross this way and that way in terms of Trump coming up and Biden going down. I think that the news will not declare a winner on election night, just because if it's left-leaning news, I think that's just their preference, and they are skeptical of a Trump win. Although I think that they see the polls, and I think that because of 2016, I think that they will declare Trump the winner. But I think it's going to take 1 to 2 weeks, and I think the states will certify that as well. And I think that will happen, and I think that there will be a clear winner on election night, or at least a trend of who is going to be winning, because I think that the turnout and the number of votes for Trump, and I said he's going to win the popular vote too. I think that the last 4 years, a lot of people just got used to Trump and got used to his style. And I think that people don't like his tone and how he does things sometimes, but I think that more people have warmed up to the idea of that style and how he's actually doing things. I think that he's also persuaded a lot of new voters, which will be unexpected. I also think that the turnout is going to be particularly high in his favor because, as I mentioned at the beginning, we talked about that ladder in terms of marketing. I think that the big fear is a really, really, really big motivator for Republicans. I think that Republicans and any centrists that are not in a political party, I think that they are going to favor Trump and turn out at a much higher conversion rate, if you will, because they are really motivated by fear, having seen some of the violence and destruction that happened over the summer in certain U.S. cities. Let's see, what else? And I think that's pretty much it. So just to recap, I was right in my 2016 prediction, although I made that privately. I was right in the 2018 prediction, having just followed the news, and that was more of a nuanced call. So proud of that. And I am confident that this prediction will be right. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. Something else could happen. The media could declare two separate winners, and we could just have two different realities going on where half the country thinks Joe Biden is president and half the country thinks Trump is president. But perhaps my prediction is a little bit optimistic in that way. But I do think that for just hitting on all of the laws of sales funnel physics much more consistently and effectively than Biden has. I mentioned one of them, the law of repetition with Biden, and that kind of closing, more positive, more inclusive, fear-reducing message. I think that was really good, but I just think that in 2016, for example, Hillary Clinton was a much stronger candidate than Biden. I think that Biden is more likable on a personal level, not even as a politician to people. But I do think that the concern about his age is real, and I think that people in the center and Democrats also see that. I was actually driving the other day. I saw a sticker from someone who was clearly a Democrat, but saying the sticker said something about like Biden, we're not excited about him. I'm just paraphrasing, but let's just vote for him. Like it's like meh, like just do it. Hold your nose and do it. And I think a lot of people will do that. But I do think that for that reason, the conversion rate will be lower for the Biden campaign, and there'll be less votes. And that's another reason why I think Trump's turnout and total number of votes will be higher across the board. All right, so that's my prediction. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Again, I did my best to keep this as objective as possible. Oh, and one more thing. So on the points of, the biggest weakness is that Trump's critics say that he is a racist person. And my prediction actually, though, is that compared to 2016, at least 3 times more African-American voters will turn out to vote for Trump. And I think this is an interesting anecdote worth thinking about and mentioning, because if and when it happens, and the data shows that, the polls show that right now, it will be ironic considering that characterization. So what are your thoughts? Leave a comment below, let me know. I encourage everyone to get out and vote, no matter who you're voting for. The United States has a great tradition of being a democratic republic, and we should all take advantage of that right to vote. I think that things are going to go better than some people who are more fearful and worried about things going wrong with the mail-in ballots. I think it's going to go better than people predict. So call me an optimist, but that's what I think. So I will talk to you soon. Have a great election day. Sit down, watch it, relax, keep cool. 2020, it's almost over, and we're going to get through it. And I think 2021 is going to be really good. All right, it's going to be really good. So stay positive, stay cool. I'll talk to you soon.